Opening chapter. Dead air. The radio had been dead for 3 minutes when the man noticed. That was how it always started. Silence where there shouldn't be any. He sat alone at the small table, collar loosened, hat still on his head like he might need to leave in a hurry. The glass in his hand was half full. The whiskey old enough to remember better days, or at least forget the bad ones. Smoke hung low in the room, curling toward the ceiling as if trying to escape before something ugly arrived. He watched the radio. It was a squat, battered thing from another life. Dials worn smooth by nervous fingers. The warm orange glow behind the frequency window flickered like a tired heartbeat. He had trusted that radio more than most men he'd known. Radios didn't lie. They just whispered, stuttered, and sometimes screamed the truth through layers of static. Outside, rain ticked against the window. The city had that soaked, beaten look. It got after midnight when even the streetlights seemed ashamed to be seen. Somewhere down the block, a hotel sign buzzed and hummed, throwing pale letters into the darkness. He didn't look at it. Hotels were temporary things. So were people. He took a slow drink. The silence broke suddenly, static rushing in like a bad memory. A voice followed. Not strong, not clear, but familiar in the way nightmares are familiar.
Sierra, Yankee, November 2. Sierra, Yankee, November 2.
A code. Just letters and numbers. But measured, precise. Spoken in a flat tone that didn't belong to any country that wanted to be found. His jaw tightened. He reached out and adjusted the dial by a fraction, the way a man disarms a trap. Slow, careful, respectful of what might happen if he rushed it. The signal sharpened, just enough to hurt. He hadn't heard that cadence in 20 years. Back then, he'd been younger, thinner, stupid enough to think there were clean sides and dirty wars. He had names then, too many of them. He remembered nights in rooms like this one, except the whiskey was cheaper and the stakes were higher. He remembered men who talked too much, women who talked too little, and messages that arrived just late enough to get someone killed. The voice stopped. Dead air again. He waited. That was the trick, waiting without hoping. Hope was how you got sloppy. When the signal returned, it wasn't numbers this time. It was his name, not the one on his papers, not the one on his mailbox. The old one, the buried one. He stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor, loud in the quiet room. He crossed to the window and pulled the curtain back an inch. Rain streaked to the glass, distorting the street below. No one lingered. No one looked up. That worried him more than footsteps would have. He went back to the table and picked up the glass, but didn't drink. His hand wasn't shaking. That surprised him. Either he was calmer than he should be, or this wasn't the first time he'd been hunted tonight. The radio spoke once more. Same frequency, 1 hour. Then nothing. He switched the set off and sat there, listening to the rain finish the conversation. The glow behind the dial faded to a dull ember. Somewhere in the city, a door would open. Somewhere else, a file would be pulled from a drawer that should have stayed closed. And somewhere, too close for comfort, someone remembered he was still breathing. He put on his coat, straightened his tie, and finally finished the whiskey. Some wars never ended. They just waited for the right man to get old enough to stop running. He pulled down the brim of his hat, killed the light, and headed out.